And we continue at 2:06 in the afternoon. Talk Radio 790 KABC, the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wangs in Culver City.
Jay writes in at johnnydontlikeshow@gmail.com. Johnny, the answer is true. I called my guy at our national insurer about making a claim on a plumbing repair. He told me straight up that if I do, they will increase my premium to make up for and then assess my account if they should drop me. So I paid out of pocket for the repair.
I think that's what everyone is doing.
It's the perfect business. Everyone's afraid to actually use the insurance, and then they drop you.
When I've had issues in the past, I just deal with it myself. I never call my insurance agent because why bother? Even if they do cover it, if they drop you from your policy and you have to go out on the open market and buy a new one, it's not like you're going to save any money. So in theory, what you're doing is you're just buying a policy to satisfy the bank for your loan.
And that price is going up and up and up every year and is going to go up drastically this year thanks to the efforts of this guy.
I'm very kind of sketchy.
800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. Joel Pollack from Breitbart News, who lost his house in the fire in Pacific Palisades and was at the press conference with President Trump on Friday, was just at a community meeting in Los Angeles where Karen Bass was in attendance. And according to Joel Pollack, he said that he walked out of this community meeting after Rabbi Ken Chasen, who had just told us not to, quote, politicize the Palisades fire, launched into a denouncement of ICE over immigration enforcement. So Joel said, sorry, I won't be covering this farce. Handpick participants to save face for the mayor. So what the mayor is now doing is astroturfing these community meetings because what happened to her with President Trump was so embarrassing for her. She is now bringing in members of the clergy, lecturing the audience not to blame her, and then the ones that she calls on to hear from are the ones who are going to sing from the company hymn book.
Sounds like Karen Bass to me. Every aspect of this disaster, she has played the wrong move.
Had Trump not come to town, this is what we would have gotten from the moment she started speaking publicly.
Well, and what's interesting is the local journalists, the reporters, they're not letting her get away with it. And they are not giving her a pass the way they gave her a major pass throughout the first 2 years of her administration, including with all the messes with trying to clean up the homeless. But listen to all the reporters badgering her yesterday about the timeline when people can go up to their property and get rid of all the debris.
Most of the people we spoke with.
Here's Fox 11.
Most of the people we spoke with did not have much to come back to. In fact, they told us they were stunned by the sheer scope of the damage. And the city is still telling people that the toxins are in the air and in the rubble, so it is not safe to be up here for long. Still for the very...
How long?
You see, that's the thing. They don't really give you a timeline and stick with it of any kind.
Can you do one mopping?
Oh, you need to go to the fake doctor for permission on that.
Next slide.
Still, for the very first time in weeks, we're actually seeing traffic on Sunset Boulevard.
It's devastating, you know.
For the first time since the fire, the Williams family and others were allowed to return to the rubble of their Palisades home.
5 generations of memories.
They're flooded with memories and questions.
Where do you even start?
For Mayor Karen Bass, about when they can clear debris.
We can't move forward until our properties are cleaned.
That first needs to be inspected for toxic materials.
Means Barbara Ferrer.
Oh, yeah, and she's real busy.
Yeah.
I want them to just be truthful. If they honestly think it's going to be 18 months, then tell me it's going to be 18 months.
We just talked to some homeowners who are frustrated because they say, is it going to be 6 months? Is it going to be 18 months? We just want a straight answer.
A couple of things that we're doing to really help speed it up is to get people to go to the Disaster Recovery Center now.
Give them a timeline.
She won't do it. Here is what she's going to do. Mark my words. Save this tape and refer back to it in the future. She's not going to give you a specific number because she'll blow through it. So what she's going to do is if it's 18 months, she's going to say, if it weren't for me, it would have been 20 months. If it's 6 months, she's going to say, if it weren't for me, it would be 8 months. Whatever the number ends up being, she's going to say, if it weren't for me and my leadership, it would have been longer than that.
A couple of things that we're doing to really help speed it up is to get people to go to the Disaster Recovery Center now, next week or the week after when we open up the One Stop, so they can begin all of that paperwork now.
I thought we're cutting through the red tape.
Yeah, didn't she tell Trump that people could go back to their properties within 24 hours?
That was the mayor's response initially, but on a walk with the press through the burn area and after pressure for a more specific timeline.
Mayor, people are still asking how long this inspection process will take with EPA.
She gave a different answer.
It would be nice if we could say by here it will be done, but that's why they have given us a range, and the range is from several weeks to 3 to 4 months.
What?
Okay. How many times has this number changed just in the short period of time since the fires were put out?
Several.
And she seems irritated that people keep asking.
Well, people would like to start rebuilding their lives. How long does it take to inspect the toxic soil?
And here's what she doesn't understand. It would be politically damaging to say if it's going to be 18 months, it's going to be 18 months. If it's going to be 6 months, it's going to be 6 months, whatever. But if you're trying to find alternate lodging, the actual number matters to you. Because if it's going to be 6 weeks, okay, I could stay with friends for 6 weeks. If it's going to be 6 months, okay, well, maybe I get an Airbnb for that. Or maybe you find one of those long-term hotels, a Homewood Suites or something with a kitchen. If it's going to be 3 to 5 years in total to rebuild, you just need to go buy a new house.
The mayor and Steve Soberoff, the real estate developer and former LA police commissioner she tapped to lead rebuilding efforts, insists they will use all money at their disposal to expedite the process. Bass also tried to allay homeowners' fears that parts of the Palisades could be rezoned.
Oh, that's happening.
Nothing is going to be done to Palisades. What will happen will be done with people who live here.
Yes, but if you make it impossible to have a timeline for people to rebuild, some people will throw their hands up and sell to the first developer, and you'll see apartment buildings and condos all up through the Palisades.
Right. And when she says nothing will be done unless it's done in conjunction with the Palisades, if you are demoralized and you sell to developers and developers want to put up wall-to-wall condos or wall-to-wall apartments, then negotiating with those developers is negotiating, quote, with the Palisades.
And although the focus was on rebuilding, the mayor did address a question about why a nearby reservoir was empty when the Palisades was burning.
There was a tear in the cover, and that's for potable water.
Right.
And so the state required it to shut down.
Right.
And so the company, the one company that does the work, was backed up and will begin the work shortly.
There's only one company that does that work?
Okay, I read something different. I read that they took bids for something like 9 to 10 months.
That's usually how this works. You know, Shangy may be in trouble with the feds, and Shangy may have been recalled, but Shangy was a soothsayer.
The bureaucracy is real.
Why wouldn't you keep it full of water and just limp along until you could get it fixed? Why do you have to empty the reservoir and then just sit there and wait almost a year before they start working on it?
Was backed up and will begin the work shortly. All of the other issues...
When is shortly? Before the next fire?
She uses these nebulous words that mean nothing.
I'm telling you, this is the first time in her entire political career she's really been looked at under a microscope, and she is not coming off well.
No. And then if you hold her to it, if, let's say, in a week it's not started yet, well, hey, you said it would start shortly. Well, shortly didn't mean a week. Shortly means however long it takes. So what she said is nothing.
All of the other issues are going to be investigated. You know that the governor has called for an investigation.
And we picked this corner to go live for a reason. Steve Soboroff says for the community to come back, so do businesses like this one. And that's why he's actually calling on Ralph's, which burned about a block from us, to reopen or open a pop-up shop, rather.
What the hell is a pop-up grocery store?
I don't know. They have pop-up Nobu at the Indian Wells tennis tournament.
At this building here, and he wants them to do that as soon as possible. He also says he's talking to other business leaders like Rick Caruso, and he's very optimistic.
Oh, Karen Bass ain't going to like that.
No, but what's the point of putting a pop-up Ralph's up if the entire neighborhood that Ralph's would serve is burned down?
Like Rick Caruso, and he's very optimistic. In fact, Steve Soboroff made this prediction. He says he believes there will be a 4th of July parade here in the Palisades this summer.
No.
So what? The businesses will be rebuilt by then? The homes will be rebuilt by then? People will be living there and celebrating the 4th of July there by July?
I don't think so.
No. I mean, maybe you'll have a paved street.
Are they going to celebrate that?
The initial estimate was 18 months before the debris was cleared.
Live in the Pacific Palisades, I'm Christy Fajardo. Let's send it back to you.
There's the latest on Karen Bass getting pressed and pressed and pressed to give people answers about things that people want to know about.
So here's our question to you at 800-222-5222, 1-800-222-5222. Do you think Karen Bass survives this? According to that poll that we talked about last week, the public is blaming Karen Bass for the anemic government response to this fire. They're not blaming Gavin Newsom. They're not blaming the feds. They're blaming the mayor, who was not in town when the fire broke out. She was in Ghana at a cocktail party for the inauguration of the president of Ghana. Initially, I thought she would survive no problem because L.A. is a Democratic town. She is a Democratic mayor, and she is the candidate that the Democratic Party got behind. And typically, it doesn't matter how bad you are. I'm looking at you, Nithya Raman. If you have the backing of the machine, you win your election. And she will have the backing of the machine. However, California moved farther to the right than any other state in the union this last election. Even though Donald Trump did not win the state, certainly there was movement in his direction. And Los Angeles County, in particular, saw heavy movement. George Gascon was elected as district attorney of L.A. County due in part to the help of the machine. He ran for re-election, and he lost in a landslide. The machine also opposed Proposition 36, which would repeal Prop 47 and bring public safety back to California. Prop 36 passed in every county in the state of California, all 58 counties. They lost control of that one. The answer that she's giving, that this is an unprecedented storm caused by global warming and it's not her fault, so don't blame her, is one that many Democrats, at least in my circle, subscribe to. They do not want to blame her. They do believe that global warming caused this to happen, and any attacks on her are partisan motivated attacks. However, global warming did not defund the fire department and then lie about it. Global warming did not empty out that reservoir full of water, knowing that that area was an extreme fire risk, and then take forever to start the construction to fix it, which still hasn't happened, by the way. Global warming did not send erroneous text messages out to people telling them to evacuate in the middle of the night when it was in fact a glitch, and none of those messages should have gone out. Global warming hasn't given homeowners 15 million different answers as to when they'll be able to move back in. It's the government that's doing that. It's Karen Bass that's doing that. It's incompetence that's doing that. So you can blame global warming all day long. The honest truth is she has failed this test, and she has failed the people of Los Angeles. And I believe, given the fact that she's going to take incoming fire from the left and the right when she runs for re-election, that she is vulnerable in ways that she was never vulnerable before. Because it's not just Rick Caruso who's going to challenge her from the right. Kenneth Mejia, the socialist controller for the city of Los Angeles, looks like he's going to run at her from the left. And he has been extremely critical of her performance all through this process. Given the fact that she is going to have at least 2 different challengers and maybe more, and she continues to fail every test that she is given, I think Karen Bass is in real trouble, and I think if the election were held today, she would lose. Let's throw that question open to you at 800-222-5222, 1-800-222-5222. Do you think Karen Bass survives the fires? I don't. What say you? At 800-222-5222, 1-800-222-5222. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, with the end of the show about 31 minutes away, if you want to keep listening, that's easy to do.
All you got to do, let's say if you want to listen to all of our past coverage of L.A. Mayor Karen Bass, is go to KABC.com, click on podcasts.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Go to the Apple Podcast app, iHeart, Spotify, search for The John Phillips Show, hit subscribe. You can download all the episodes.
It's not a namsy-pamsy thing.
You do a Google on the YouTube.
No.
Or get that handy-dandy KABC app.
Oh, you're so optimistic.
Search KABC AM in the Apple App Store, the Android Store. It's the easiest way to listen live to this radio station. Download all the podcasts, listen to them at night, or listen to them when you wake up.
What a wonderful way to start your day.
And coming up next week, we're going to the OC.
How exciting is this? Come see Johnny and I broadcast live from noon to 3 on Friday the 7th at Rove, Santa Ana. Rove, Santa Ana is a full-service EV charging station with 40 ultra-fast EV chargers, a 24/7 lounge with restrooms and free Wi-Fi, a car wash, and a premium convenience store, Recharge by Gelson's. We're going to have free samples from vendors and barbecuing coming on, so come hungry as we broadcast live. Rove and Recharge by Gelson's are located at 1008 East 17th Street in Santa Ana off the 5 at the corner of East 17th and Lincoln. We'll see you live Friday the 7th.
Do you think L.A. Mayor Karen Bass, Mother Goose, survives the fires? I don't. What say you? At 800-222-5222, 1-800-222-5222. Do you believe L.A. Mayor Karen Bass will survive the fires? I don't. What say you? At 800-222-5222, 1-800-222-5222. Let's begin with Matt in Santa Clarita. Matt, hello.
Hey, John, Randy, great show. I actually think that she'll probably survive this, and for a couple of reasons. Number one is recency bias, right? I mean, it's fresh on everybody's mind right now. The longer that she delays, it's going to kind of slip from a lot of people's memory, right or wrong. Number two, look at the community that it impacted, right? This is a very, very wealthy community, a very, very small population in a city of 4.5 million. There hasn't been, these are people with second homes, with a lot of wealth, with places to go, with friends. If this had happened in a different part of the city, where there would be, maybe a poorer community or something along those lines where there's mass displacement and mass chaos, I think it would have came to the forefront. And unfortunately, human nature, people, I don't want to say that they would forget about it, but they would, they would move on and say, and a lot of people, unfortunately, would be like, it's a lot of rich people that were affected, and they're going to be they're going to be just fine. And, Karen Bass is endorsed by the one-party Democrat machine, like you had said. And, they can move on. They can move on from this. I wish it wasn't the case, but I think human nature is what it is. And also never doubt the ability for the LA and California voter to have just a pathological pain, tolerance for pain.
You certainly make a strong case. And then also, many of the people who have been displaced because of this fire are essentially partisan Democrats. So your partisanship, even though your life has been turned upside down, is still a strong pull. We are very tribal with our politics, and we're extremely partisan right now compared to where we were in previous years, in previous election cycles. So even if you're angry at how the government treated you, even if you're not happy with the mayor's response, even if you're living in a Homewood Suites for 2 years while your home is being rebuilt, and on the 85th delay, you may end up still pulling the lever for her because that's just what you're used to doing.
Without question. I mean, there is almost a religious zeal with the partisanship in some of these, communities in LA. And whenever there's a false religion, right, that you're not going to blame the religion. You're going to say you weren't devout enough. And you're gonna double down on crazy policies and all this type of, all the environmental regs and all that. Well, we just haven't suffered enough. Let's do it.
You could be right. Thank you for the call, sir. Let's go to Hennessy in Orange. Hennessy, hello.
No, she does not survive. This is a lady who thrives on one thing, and that's bureaucracy. She wouldn't know how to pass permits and go past red tape. It's not in her nature. She's not a business person. Also, she has an antagonist in Trump who's extremely popular. And I do believe he's going to continue to hammer on this issue, which will put it in the public sphere. And eventually that partisanship the gentleman was talking about prior will take a more broader scope. Also, for an analogy, I think when you impede someone's ability to live their life, literally physically, it doesn't work well. I'm from Chicago. In 1979, the Democratic machine, the old man Daley, had a mayor called Belandic. There was a massive blizzard. He didn't send the plows out early enough, and then the images of people from the south side, north side, waiting for the trains that never came, and people's inability to go to work, the machine actually did not get reelected. And that ushered in a different era of a different political bias per se. Democrats still controlled, but it wasn't the machine. So she has to tread lightly for sure. And Caruso is a man like we all are with animal spirits, and he's going to pounce on this as well. So she has a lot of factors outside of her domain to work with. Thanks for letting me share my opinion.
Sure. And to piggyback on your point, to go back also to what the previous caller said, this fire only impacted a small portion of the county in terms of people being displaced from their homes. And yes, it's a wealthy pocket, Pacific Palisades. That being said, all it took was Trump leaning on her a little bit to show that she is totally incompetent and has no plans or no idea in terms of when this is going to be made right. How many times did she change on how long it's going to be before people can start to rebuild their homes? I've lost count already, and I don't think she settled on a number. Well, even though that only directly impacts a small handful of people, anyone who watches the news, who's aware of what's going on, is cognizant of the fact that she has no plan and she has no idea. So even though that doesn't directly impact you, that's not a good look, because if and when there's some sort of tragedy that impacts you or your community, this is the same woman who's going to be in charge of making sure that everything gets fixed, and you're SOL. Let's go to Dave in Los Angeles. Dave, hello.
Yes, John. So the issue would be, well, we have the socialists criticizing her, but I don't think it's enough. You've got to have other entities, other people amplifying the message. And it has to be juxtaposed with the overall picture of California. Like you just said, homeowners insurance being canceled, the fires being the lead cause of this, and then the Lara, just opposing it with her because how does it affect everybody, not just Los Angelinos? So if you do that, and we get we're not going to get Jessica Patterson and Corinne Rankin, who are the top officials in the GOP establishment of the California Republican Party. They've got Democrat leanings. I can prove that as a delegate. I am a delegate. So we've got to amplify the message.
Well, I can tell you this. This would be the first election where the Los Angeles Times is not on the same page as the Democratic Party. The LA Times was on the same page as the Democratic Party in the last cycle, and certainly for my entire lifetime. But now that the owner of the paper is taking a turn to the right, and he has said that it was a mistake to endorse Karen Bass and that competence matters most, if the LA Times starts hammering Karen Bass and her performance and does so repeatedly, then that might have an impact in ways that we haven't seen before. These are uncharted waters for us. We've always had a paper in bed with the Democratic Party. And for us to go through an election cycle where that's not the case, maybe it will have an impact, maybe it won't. I can tell you this, it's not going to help Karen Bass. Thank you for the call, sir. Let's go to Andrea in Dana Point. Andrea, hello.
Hey, John, love your show. Listen all the time. I have two friends that lost homes in Pacific Palisades. One thing, to answer your first question, I don't think Bass is going to survive this. She comes across as an idiot. When she was at the round table with Trump, she seemed to be smirking, and she kind of looked like a deer in headlights, in my opinion. The people that we know in Pacific Palisades, they are not going to rebuild. And this is something that's I haven't heard talked about much. They were underinsured, not just uninsured. They were insured, but what people don't realize, basically all over the country, I used to be in the insurance industry, is what you really should do with insurance is you should have a general contractor give you an estimate of what it would cost to rebuild your home every year with the new building codes, et cetera. People don't do that. And the insurance industry has an endorsement that basically will keep you up with inflation, supposedly, right? It doesn't usually do that. So our friends in Pacific Palisades, they're choosing not to rebuild. They don't want to wait 5 years. They're staunch Democrats. I know other people that are staunch Democrats, too, that haven't lost a home but had to evacuate. And most of them that I've talked to, they want all the policies involved in this out because of all the failures between the reservoir that was empty. The fact, this is another thing I don't know that you've brought up, that in 2014, I believe it was, there was a voter initiative on the ballot. We voted for it, passed, to build more reservoirs. We haven't built a reservoir since 1979 in California. So between the fact that the San Ynez Reservoir was empty, she knew about it, like you were saying earlier in the program, that there was only one company that could repair it. Just everything, the insurance, everything else. I don't see how she's going to survive it. She's so incompetent. And I was going to make the point that you just made about the LA Times owner who said he regrets the fact he endorsed her, that she's grossly incompetent, and the fact that Trump is bringing that up. I think you're right on point.
Do you think your friends are going to vote for her?
No, not at all. No. And I have other friends that were that had to leave with their 95-year-old mother from the Hollywood fire that luckily was put out really quickly. Everyone that I know is just totally livid. We're originally from LA. We live in Orange County. I've talked to politicians also, by the way. I've been calling our local assembly person in the state assembly and also the senator, and whether they're Republican or Democrat. And they all seem to be, well, maybe because it's politically important that they do this, right? Saying they want to do whatever they can so this doesn't happen again. One last point I wanted to make. I know you're giving me a lot of time. I appreciate it. I read an article, I believe it was in the Wall Street Journal, and they said if they would have done everything right ahead of time, yes, there were winds up to 100 miles an hour, but they did everything wrong in such a bad way that if they would have built desalination plants across the all along the coast, if they would have actually built more reservoirs, more infrastructure to capture the water when we had the huge amounts of atmospheric river rains last year, if they would have actually done deforestation, they would have done all these things. What they said is the fires wouldn't have been as catastrophic, which they're now saying they will be considered the worst catastrophe, I believe, and the worst fire we've ever had. I don't know if it's the worst fire or the worst catastrophe in terms of the billions of dollars, right? So the fact that all these things happened, I don't even know about the governor. That's a more iffy. He's been recalled, 6 times, I think? Is that about right?
Well, one made the ballot, but there have been multiple efforts to recall him from office.
Exactly. But the shocker to me was the fact that we haven't even built a desalination plant in I don't know how many years. It's been ridiculous. They're about to build one here where I live in Dana Point. It's supposed to be. It keeps getting pushed back, but they're supposed to open in 2030. But the fact that the San Ynez Reservoir next to the Palisades Fire was empty, as you said, and they only had one company they mentioned that could fix it. Give me a break. So what our friends in Palisades are doing is they're doing a long-term rent, and they're not rebuilding. They're going to sell the land, and who knows what's going to happen. They said there's just no way. They're just not going to do it.
I don't blame them. If I lived there and I had to go through all that, I'd probably end up doing the same thing. Thank you for the call.